We are live on a Monday. It is the 24th of February. Welcome inside the vault for a Ravens lunch hour live stream. I'm Bobby Trossett, as always, joined alongside Sarah Ellison. It's the NFL Scouting Combine week. I'll be wheels up in a little over 3 hours from right now. So we're going to jam-pack the show, and then I'm going to head off to BWI for a week of hopefully, prospect analysis and networking and chasing down as many voices and faces and, names as I possibly can on the road. So look forward to that. One programming note before we dive into today's rundown, as we were sort of speculating last week when the media availability came out, in order to give you the most fresh live stream content tomorrow, we will go live as soon as John Harbaugh finishes up his press conference. So Eric will be 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by John at 1 p.m. Eastern. So moral of the story is no noon show tomorrow. Mark your calendars accordingly. And when Harbs finishes up, hopefully we'll be able to get on around 1:30 or so Eastern time in the early afternoon. So that's what we have coming up in terms of today's show. Lamar Jackson's latest accolade. We'll take a look back at what Emmanuel Acho had to say about Lamar, the great Steve Young, NFL Hall of Famer, and something that Emery Hunt, who is our friend, and we're going to be having him on at some point, Sarah, for sure, as we approach draft season, what he had to say, including some around the NFL notes, and which also, just before we went on earlier this morning, a Browns standout safety is rumored to be available through free agency in the coming weeks. We'll take a look at Devonte Adams and the top Ravens topics entering NFL Combine Week. Before I stop rambling, how are you? What's going on?
Good. Excellent weekend. I'm excited for the week of the Combine. Yes, I know we will be getting some information on the NFL draft prospects, but if anybody's covered the Combine in the past, you will know it is a massive, massive free agency news timeline, because that is when GMs, front offices, and agents are all in the same city, all in the same convention center or stadium. A lot of them are going to be touching shoulders at restaurants, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of free agency work gets done there. And I know they're not supposed to be talking to other people's agents if they're still on the other team. That's the league's worst kept secret that goes on, but for sure you can do that with your own free agents. And so that is why it will be a big free agency week for sure. And I'm excited to see all the stuff that you're going to be able to get while you're down there, Bobby.
We'll see. I'll be trying to rub elbows in as many steakhouses as I possibly can. You know that. We're already reserved tomorrow night at St. Elmo's, and that's the go-to spot. And I got to shout out a Ravens fan too. Alec Whistler is a server there. I hope I'm saying his title correctly, but he's a part of Ravens Flock on Twitter, and Jake and I are going to be with him tomorrow. So looking forward to that, and looking forward to what we have coming up, starting with this latest Lamar accolade, Sarah.
Yeah, so PFF, starting last Friday after we were wrapping up the show, revealed the final players in their top 101 NFL players from the 2024 season. And not surprisingly, it was Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson, who was number one on the list. Out on Twitter, this is the main point they use to kind of justify putting Lamar at 101. Says he's the only quarterback in PFF history with a 90-plus passing grade and 90-plus rushing grade in the same season. He ended up with a 94.9 overall grade from PFF, and with the way they do things, his passing grade was a 93.3. Obviously, we know his total yards, 5,600 over that, and just one under 50 total touchdowns, Bobby. And so, as I kind of pointed out, not that PFF is the end-all, be-all. PFF is one data point, right? It's one group. It's one organization, and they analyze football through their lens with their kind of, rubric, if you will, of how they like to grade players. So it's just one. But as you kind of put it in with the rest of what the other groups and organizations were saying, it is for sure clear, without a doubt, that Lamar Jackson was the best player in the 2024 season. The best player. So the NFLPA, which is the Players Association, when they put in their votes, and it's only players that can vote. And Bobby, they can only vote on players at their own position or players that they of the position that they most go up against in a game. Okay, so pass rushers and cornerbacks, guys like that can vote on quarterbacks, and so can other quarterbacks. So the NFLPA said Lamar Jackson was the best quarterback. He was the all-pro, voted by all other NFL players. Then the Associated Press, they voted Lamar Jackson as first-team all-pro. So they said he was the best quarterback of the 2024 season. How about Professional Football Writers of America? Okay, this is media, but specifically their writers. They voted Lamar Jackson as on their all NFL team, so he was QB1. So they said he was the best quarterback, and they happened to vote him as the MVP. And now you've added in the PFF top player of 2024. And just in case those that are wondering, the way the PFF decides it is they're saying it's the top individual performance, regardless of position, class, or talent, resulted in Lamar being named the best overall player. So you add it all together, Bobby. They're all saying it. So many different groups, not just one, not just two, many groups saying he is the best.
across the board, besides one group of 50 voters who were pretty much the same as, if not the exact same as who voted all pro, yet we all know how things shook out earlier this month at NFL Honors. So, and we all remember what Emmanuel Acho, one of those voters, specifically said to us earlier this month as well when you booked him for our show.
Yeah, so that's the other thing is listen, Josh Allen, he got the MVP, and which is fine. That's their right. They get to vote for who they want. But just remember, and you can't be mad at it, because this is what there were 7 people that flipped from saying Lamar was the best quarterback. He's the first team all-pro. And then they flipped and voted Josh Allen the MVP. So he wins it. He officially wins it. But let's just remember that 3 of those people that flipped, and we just haven't talked to the other ones, but 3 of those that flipped admitted that Lamar was better than Josh Allen. So he can have the MVP this year, but let's just remember they changed the definition. Here was Acho talking to us, Bobby, on our show, saying, as I was pointing out, all the things that Lamar had done historically. And then Acho had to admit that, yes, you're right, Lamar was the best.
You did something that's never been done before. I'm like, yo, that's cool. That's incredibly impressive. But, like, it doesn't make you the MVP. It makes you the most impressive. It makes you the coolest. It makes you the most unique.
Or the best this year. I mean, come on. When you have the 4th best ever passer rating and you're known to be a dual threat quarterback, when you have the best touchdown to interception ratio in NFL history, that makes you the best.
And that's why.
I just want to hear you say it. Who is the best quarterback?
It was Lamar.
Okay.
But that was obvious by my all-pro vote.
Well, you should have voted for MVP, in my opinion. You should have done it. You should have done it, Acho. I got love for you, but you should have done it.
He's laughing his butt off at the end there. That's classic.
So that's fine. That's fine. They voted Josh most valuable. And Acho even said in there, he goes, it doesn't, this might only affect this year. It might not always be this way. Like, okay, how about this, Bobby? How about this? How about, let me get her name. Lindsey Jones. She was an MVP voter for the Ringer. She said the same thing. She said her all-pro vote meant that he was the best. And then she said to me, the MVP award is open to narrative considerations, a player's career arc. What? Career arc and the roster decisions made around him. Okay. And then remember, Dan Orlovsky, when he was on Get Up, admitted that Lamar was the best. So that's fine. You get your MVP. But let's not forget who the best was, according to all of these groups, including 3 of the voters who voted for Josh Allen, says that Lamar Jackson was the best. So Lamar Jackson, hands down, was the best player of 2024.
I enjoyed revisiting that segment. I mean, I was a part of it, but I kind of forgot how awesome that was. I mean, that was straight up pure entertainment right there. You're like bullying him, yet also like loving up on him, if that's possible. Doing the same thing in the same breath, like throwing him up against the wall to make sure you get what you're looking for, but at the same time, Acho, I love you. I got love for you, and he's laughing.
Yeah.
And you got what you wanted, didn't you?
I got what I wanted. He admitted that Lamar was the best. I got an MVP voter who said that they voted Josh Allen as the MVP. He admitted that Lamar was the best.
I love it. Well, another guy that I'm sure
Mission
if
accomplished.
he had a vote this year would certainly have done that is your friend and BYU guy, Steve Young, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, so this is what's interesting. So randomly, it's funny because your guy and my guy are kind of meeting, and it gives us a moment to kind of reflect on this. So Emory Hunt just this weekend had put out an old video clip of, I think it was NBC analysts talking about Steve Young. This is later in Steve Young's career when he's having success. Remember, he did not have early success. He was with the Tampa Bay Bucks. He was in the I can't remember the name of the other league. I think he played up in the Canadian team in the other league for professional football, and Emory had kind of brought up how Steve Young back in the day was called something that Lamar is called a lot, and so Emory posted this video and said, "Here's why Steve Young goes so hard for a guy like Lamar Jackson and some other quarterbacks that can run." And we know when Steve was on here about a year and a half ago, he was going so hard for Lamar Jackson. And this is why. Check out these analysts talking about Steve Young back in the day.
Bowl candidates in Atlanta in late January.
Yeah, you're right. And we just saw a picture of Steve Young. Let's start with him with the 49ers. You can't give this kid enough credit. I mean, he does follow Joe Montana. He's pretty much exercised all the demons here. And Buddy Ryan last night, the defensive coordinator of the Houston Oilers, made a very interesting comment. He said, as a head coach, I always wanted a running quarterback. As a defensive coordinator, I hate running quarterbacks. Steve Young, when he came into the league, was called by a lot of people a running back who could throw the football.
Well, of course, Buddy Ryan could quickly relate, of course, to Randall Cunningham,
yes,
the quarterback could run for him when he was the head man at Philadelphia.
Steve Young called the running back that can also throw the ball. So I kind of bring this up just because that was the first time I had seen that clip. I saw it over the weekend that Emory Hunt had posted. But also, from Baltimore's perspective, when you see Lamar Jackson get robbed, right, of an MVP, when the MVP voters themselves are admitting that he was the best, but they just changed the definition of the award in order to not give it to him, it feels just completely unfair. And it's just somewhat good to know that Lamar's not the first one, and he won't be the last. And Steve Young himself took until he was 30 to become a starter, Bobby, because people didn't believe in him, whether it was because they called him a running back that could throw or because he was a lefty or anything like that. But I thought this was another good excuse for us to go back into the archives and look at how Steve Young talked about Lamar when he was on our show.
For, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar, Michael Vick, these are my people. I feel a tremendous kinship to the challenge of being mobile and playing the position. I don't relate as much to Peyton and to Dan Marino. Like, they played a different game because of the capabilities that they had. And so those are unique challenges that they can speak to that I actually can't speak to as well. But the game, in some ways, in the last 20 years since I retired, has come to me. Like, it's the game that I was the oddity back 20 years ago. Now it's you're the prototype. And so when I see my people, my guys in a situation that's not being, given the opportunity to flourish, then I'm going to speak up. And so that's where this got started. Don't tell me Lamar is, well, that's Lamar. He can't do certain things. He can't, I pull my hair out. That's when you could see the more I talked on that thing, you could see more of the emotion that I had that had been built up, because do not diminish the potential of what Lamar Jackson can be in the game today. The game is his game. I've admired and the humility and the savviness of John and the people inside the building that have done this. Because to me, I think it opens up the possibility for a big victory on Monday night and wins in January. And you saw the growing pains early in the season as they try to transition. There's growing pains, and Lamar's going to have growing pains as he, and that's not over, by the way. We're kind of just starting it. And so, is it ahead of schedule? It feels like a little bit. And I beg them to just continue to take the chances to let him develop, because I still believe that, like Patrick Mahomes, Lamar could be the greatest player. And you see Patrick headed that direction. And I think Lamar and he could go head to head for, 10 more years. And if I was in his shoes, I want to speak for him. He hasn't asked me to do that, but I feel like I'm the older guy. I got to speak for my guys.
So much of that now, like a year plus later, right? That was December 2023, if I'm not mistaken.
Right before the Christmas Day 49ers game,
which sealed MV2 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
One thing he said there stood out. You go back and listen to this, and so many different things stand out each time. He referred to himself as the oddity in his day. And he would be, and Lamar is, and other dual threats are the prototype in today's age.
Yeah.
Those are strong words right there. And I think it's such yet another indication in Exhibit A why he feels this, to use his phrase, this kinship to who he refers to as his people, one of which is Lamar.
I know. And what's interesting, I envision this for Lamar because Bobby obviously is, because he's a BYU alum and I am too. I remember watching that Super Bowl when he won Super Bowl MVP and he's coming in for Joe Montana and they shipped him out to Kansas City Chiefs and he had all the pressure, right? Because he didn't even become a starter until he was 30. And then he's leading the best offense in the league. And when he finally won that Super Bowl, he on the sideline went over to his teammates and said, "Can somebody pull this monkey off my back?" Right? The proverbial monkey off his back. Because he had been talked about so much. He'd been talked about, can you win with the lefty? He's a running back that can throw. How could you pick him over Joe Montana, who won us 4 Super Bowls, all that kind of stuff. And all that pressure just melted off when he finally won his Super Bowl. And that is why somebody like him can say, it's not over for Lamar, right? I've been treated unfair. He sees that Lamar sometimes gets treated unfair. And he sees that his success came later. He sees that Lamar's had way more success, obviously, early in his career. But it's like if Steve Young can do it with his beginning, then Lamar Jackson can do it. And I promise you, Steve Young will be right up there with all of us celebrating once Lamar is able to get that proverbial monkey off his back.
My gosh. And Steve, of course, went on to get 3 of them. So sure enough. And you said it. I mean, talk about late bloomer.
Yeah.
Lamar's on this trajectory that's one of one in a sense. He's obviously chasing after the elusive Lombardi, and Mahomes is well out in front. But gosh, the accolades are really second to none outside of there. Now, speaking of accolades, it's the way we got this started was that top 101 list. Were there any other Ravens that found themselves in?
Yeah, so Derrick Henry came in the top 10. He was the only other Raven in the top 10. So he was number 5. PFF pointed out that he had a 93.5 rushing grade, which was first in the entire NFL. And he had 80 missed tackles forced. 80 dudes missed tackles because he forced that, which was first in the league. So he was number 5 on the list. Meanwhile, the other guys that made the 101 overall, Kyle Hamilton was number 14. Marlon Humphrey, having that resurgent year, was 61. Tyler Linderbaum, 69. Mark Andrews, 75. Zay Flowers, 95. So that rounds it out for the Ravens.
Pretty.
And by the way, Mark Andrews deserves that, by the way, to be in there. We know how it all ended. We've had that discussion many times. We don't know what his future in Baltimore is going to be, but him having a resurgent year also, nice for him. And I just love the love that everybody keeps seeing, the love that Kyle Hamilton gets, because he really is one of the best defenders in the NFL.
I think you'd probably expect a lot of those names to have found their way in, right? Pretty
Yeah.
what you'd
So
expect.
that's 7 total Ravens making the top 101.
7
Which
total, and they had 9 Pro
Pro
Bowlers.
Bowlers. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. 9 initial Pro Bowlers. Obviously, things moved around quite a bit.
Yeah.
Ronnie Stanley got in at the back end, stuff like that. But it's one of those things that you want to celebrate, and yet you also are like, man, we had the team. We had the team.
No doubt.
To go further.
No doubt. And speaking of Ronnie, he found himself on the Athletics 2025 NFL free agency rankings list, and he comes in at number 3. Obviously, a highly accomplished tackle. Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, as we made content around last week, reported that Ronnie is a priority. We're expected to learn more about, obviously, that, as you pointed out at the top, that it's not just about draft-related items and prospect-related items this week. It's a lot about everybody being in the same place and maybe some pre-free agency buzz starting to happen. So,
well, let's get to Ronnie when we get to the combine stuff. I think I should have moved that slide down a little bit. Maybe we can talk about the NFL. I just think that I have other slides on Ronnie that we can talk about more when we talk about the combine.
Oh yeah. No, just setting things up to talk about around the NFL, of course, which we've been doing a little bit lately, just as some players become either available or rumored to be available in the coming weeks. And when their position, maybe not the fit, but when the position itself tends to fit a Ravens need, we want to have that conversation. And we've done that in recent weeks, whether it be Cooper Kupp or Deebo Samuel, or we kicked the tires around a little bit on Myles Garrett, of course, when his trade request came in. Who was a player that we did last week? It was Joey Bosa, wasn't it? So, we've just like to have the conversation, and that's what we're going to do right now with an AFC North safety who Mike Garafolo tweeted about earlier today, and that is Browns' Juan Thornhill. Looks like Cleveland is expected to be releasing him. The team in Thornhill's camp, according to Garafolo, spoke in recent days, and the decision was made to part ways now. That gives him a few weeks before free agency to find his next home. He had 1 year at $7 million left on his deal. And obviously, Sarah, Cleveland right now is, dare you say, kind of feels like they're on deck of a rebuild here. They might be getting rid of their, not for nothing, but they're gonna have to move on. You would think, if they want to accommodate one of their cornerstone pieces trade requests in Myles Garrett. Deshaun Watson's future is obviously unknown. They may very well draft a quarterback at 2 overall or go the bridge route with a Kirk Cousins. And now it looks like somebody that didn't really fit in well from what I've heard in the Brown side of things. And that's saying, take that with a grain of salt because of the amount of dysfunction that they've had. But Thornhill is expected to be available, and obviously the safety position is one that the Ravens will be taking a close look at, whether that be through free agency or the draft.
You think the Ravens will be taking a look at him?
The position. The position.
Oh, the position. Yeah. Yeah, no, this is one of those, one of those cuts where it's just like, sorry, we're paying that quarterback, Deshaun Watson, a lot of guaranteed money. You mentioned that they might be going through a rebuild. Unless Myles Garrett, unless they trade him, I don't think so. And I think that they're trying to keep him. I think they're trying to convince him, like, hey, we're going to give you a shot, in the playoffs and try to build a Super Bowl team, even though everybody on the outside is laughing at that proposition. And so, yeah, it's certainly something to watch from a Ravens perspective because they're losing a guy that's been there for 2 seasons there in Cleveland. He's recorded 103 tackles and 4 pass breakups. Certainly not a guy that strikes a lot of fear in my view. And I also don't see the Ravens. I don't see the Ravens going after a veteran safety. I think when you're getting ready to pay Kyle Hamilton and you kind of have a veteran there, even though you don't think of him as a veteran, but he is a veteran in Ardarius Washington, you have him there. To me, it seems like you will go through the draft. That doesn't mean that they can't find somebody on, a super, a deal that works for you, but they're so cramped with money right now, so tight with money that I just don't see them putting a ton of money into the safety position. But it, looking at Thornhill is something to do because it changes your AFC North rival.
Yeah. And to be clear, when I said it wasn't a great fit for him in Browns country, I mean, this guy's been banged up over the last couple of years. He's played in just 11 games in 2023 and 24 respectively total. So 22 total in 2 years. And he just had injury after injury, didn't tally a ton of statistics along the way. 49 tackles, 3 pass breakups in 22 games. So this is somebody, yes, that would be, and they have, to your point, maybe they've been there, done that with the veteran safety. Not that Marcus didn't have a whole lot left in the tank when they signed him and backed up the Brinks truck back in 2022. That was a player that everybody was excited about at the time. And it was certainly an uncharacteristic move of them to pay him the way that they did so handsomely. So I'm with you. I think that you retool through the draft. You have 11 picks so far, but this is a player that they have, a decent amount of familiarity in, being that they've played him twice each of the last 2 years, or at least he's been a part of the program. Not sure if he's even played in those games because of how many he's missed. But this came down earlier today, and some safety needy teams around the league. It's generating some buzz for those folks.
Yeah, and the chat is pointing out that Thornhill played with the Ravens' new safeties coach in Kansas City. So
Donald DeLisio.
Yeah, if that connection, brings them together, I could see that. But Thornhill wouldn't be. I mean, the Ravens just don't have any money to give to safety 3.
No,
that's not priority. So if that connection is enough that brings him in and he says, hey, I want to compete for a championship and I'm willing to take less, then I can see it. But short of that, it would be tough to see.
Well, and you got a couple young dogs in the building as well that I see some of you guys referencing, and we get it. We recognize that. You get the Maryland safety Bo Braid and the 7th round pick out of Purdue, Sanusi Kane, are going to be, you bet your bottom dollar, they're going to be busting their butts all summer long, all spring long in OTAs and minicamp and whatnot to try and convince the powers that be that they're capable of being safety 3. But I'd expect the Ravens to obviously bolster that group as much as they possibly can to give themselves, as many resources as possible before they make that decision.
All right. Meanwhile, Bobby, it's the time of season and it's always in the off season, but different outlets will put together trade ideas. Okay. Trade ideas. So PFF put together an idea for the Ravens. They've got Devonte Adams to the Ravens. So let me read you a little bit of this. And the question on the back end is, do you like it or do you leave it? Okay. Do you like it or do you leave it? Devonte Adams, wide receiver to the Ravens. This is what PFF proposed. He said, while the headlines turning out of New York continue to paint the picture of a strained relationship between Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, the future of Devonte Adams with the gang green has largely become an afterthought. The sentiment is that Adams' time in New York is likely also coming to an end, but many have just settled on the conclusion that Adams will follow Rodgers wherever he may go. But given how poor their connection looked with the Jets, that's not a foregone conclusion. Instead, Adams could very well strike out on his own and make the most of the limited time he has left to be a key contributor to a productive offense. And it kind of goes through his stats, his PFF grade, which was, pretty decent. And they mentioned that he's an ex-receiver. So he says the Ravens have needed more receiver help in the form of a difference-making ex-receiver after finding success with Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman in recent campaigns. Despite being snubbed for the MVP, Lamar Jackson is producing as one of the best signal callers charted in the PFF era. Getting Jackson more help is crucial to capitalizing on his prolific pay, and Adams could be the key. Do you like it or do you leave it?
Should we first cut to what he said about the potential of this? Not this, but the potential of playing with Lamar in the past.
Sure. Yeah.
As a little appetizer before we give you our answers. All right. And friend of the show, Amber Theo Harris, the interviewer.
Of Lamar Jackson. You could either play on a team where Lamar Jackson is the quarterback and you're guaranteed a Super Bowl, but as the leading receiver, you might have 858-yard season like Zay Flowers did max. Or you could go to a team like Miami, Dallas, Detroit, where, they're slinging that thing. I know 2 of those have been eliminated, so they're not going to the Super Bowl, but they're slinging that thing. And Perhaps your Hall of Fame career is
You
solidified.
can have
'cause you're
CD
gonna have
Lamb
1,500 yard
16,
season.
1700.
Hey,
that.
look, hey, CD did his thing, and
Yes, he
I
did.
don't want to take no credit, but I did get on I Am Athlete and tell y'all boys CD was a top 5 receiver, and everybody was trying to give me backlash and all that. And I said, okay, I'm CD. I said Mike Evans, he went in there and did what he did again, you know. So I ain't gonna get into that, but I would say right now, man, I've had big seasons, man. To me, it's like, this is a long-winded answer, but to me, I think it's funny that we judge who's the best receiver off of who has the most yards anyway, because not everybody's getting the same targets. The offense ain't the same. Like that shouldn't be what's like. To me, if you have 1,300 and somebody has 15 and a half, to me, you can have a better season than them with that 1,300, depending on what the touchdown and just how it looked, whatever you did. So I've had big seasons. I don't necessarily need the 1,700. That would feel great. And now if you told me I was gonna get the record, I might have to think about something different. If you said 2K, then that might be
a little different.
I have to think about it. But if you're giving me a bowl and I get to get out there with Dub and Lamar and have fun, boys be having, I think I might take that 900 and keep it. Give me 10 tugs and I'm good.
All right. We had to wait patiently for that one on the back end of the clip, but you heard it there. You heard Lamar. Sarah, the answer is easy for me. It is a take it and run if you're the Ravens. This is a technician's technician. He'll turn 33 in December. He's still got it in him. Obviously, New York was disastrous. Vegas was disastrous. Green Bay was illustrious. It's going to be why he's a walking Hall of Famer in Canton one day. This is a player, Sarah, that would instantly change Baltimore's offense and give Lamar that true X that he has never even been close to having throughout his 7-year career. And it would give you shades of the past, an Anquan Bolden type who is nearing, not exact. Do you remember how old Anquan was off the top of your head when he joined the Ravens? He wasn't as old as Devonte would be. Correct?
He was I want to say late 20s. I'll look it up.
So there's definitely an age difference if memory serves, because again, Devontae's 32, but doesn't it give you shades of that? A player that has made his money to date and that wants so desperately to win a championship. And if that's where he is, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but if that's where he is, why wouldn't Baltimore be a destination? And OJ in the chat here is saying 29, if that's what your research finds. But anyway, for Anquan.
Yeah, I'm seeing he was 30 when he first came. And then, so he was 30. He was 32 the Super Bowl year. And then when he played for the San Francisco 49ers the next year, he was 33. So he had just turned 30.
Point is, obviously there's a couple year difference, but it gives me shades of that. And if Devonte truly wants what he has not yet reached, and that is a Super Bowl, which this current era of Ravens are chasing down, right? Like savages, they're chasing this down. It's Super Bowl or bust. Then what a fit he would be in this organization.
Oh, there's no question about whether Devonte Adams would make the Ravens offense that much more lethal, that much more potent, that he would be a major, major weapon to Lamar Jackson. And so my question to you is, for sure, everybody would say, take it and run. Okay. I'm asking, what about when you got to pay the bill?
Yeah.
And we know. So let me just show you this. This will depend to me a bit on like, are the Jets trying to trade him, or does he get cut? Because right now in the season of 2025, his base salary is $36 million. You can't take that and run. You can't even lift that up.
No.
Like
Take
you
the player
go down
and leave
there,
that
you try to
behind.
lift that up. You're not even able to lift it up.
Can you take the player and run and leave that from behind, perhaps? Yeah, that's not coming to Baltimore. That's for sure.
No, and so I'm just curious, like, is anybody going to trade for that? You know what I mean? And so I would like to revisit this, because if he gets cut, and based off of the information he just gave, then it's like, He was just asked if he would take 1,700 yards or 800 to play with Lamar and get a chance at the Super Bowl. He's like, give me Lamar and the 800 yards. Can I also get 10 touchdowns? Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Yep.
Adams.
Yep.
So this isn't happening if they try to trade him.
No.
There's no universe where the Ravens can find $35 million. So I want to see if he gets cut. That's what I want to see.
From his perspective too, they wanted to they want to get the band back together in New York. Well, Rodgers is no longer in New York. So at this point, if you are chasing that trophy, which again, you'd think, what else does this guy have to prove other than he is a champion? And I would argue nothing. So if that's the case, you don't want to be a part of a rebuild in New York. They don't even have a high enough draft pick, Sarah, to get a top quarterback. And this year's draft, all due respect to Shador and Cam, is not what last year's draft was, not the year before. It's not stacked heavy at the quarterback position. It's not stacked heavy at the wide receiver position either, by the way. So if that's the case, which it is, I don't know why he would want to stay in New York. And so you'd think that he'd be willing to be a little bit flexible here in hopes of chasing what he has not yet achieved throughout his future Hall of Fame career.
Yeah, and as PFF said, like there's only so many years left that he has of productivity, right?
Yep.
Like pretty soon he'll find himself as a DeAndre Hopkins, right? Like I was looking at some lists of ranking the free agents, and DeAndre Hopkins was listed as like a tier 4 free agent, and I think he was ranked in like the 70s or 80s of like the guys coming up. And so it's like, and DeAndre Hopkins in the past was like, you'd be drooling over him. You'd give up major draft assets for him. You would do all that. And so Devonte Adams, this is for sure the time where he would want to strike. And I don't know how much he believes in Aaron, but like this, it is a foregone conclusion that it's always like, oh, he'll just follow Aaron. Like, I don't know why you would do that. I don't know. And speaking of Aaron, I didn't bring in the slide, but I think we have time for it. We're at 46. Just, I got a question for you, Bobby, and the chat. A lot of chatter about Aaron going to like maybe one of two places, maybe the Raiders or the Steelers. A lot of chatter about the Steelers. I don't know if it's going to happen. I think recently he said he was caught by a reporter, and he said, well, I want to go where they want me, and that they're an actual good team, kind of a little dig at the Jets. It's like, okay, but they gave you full control over there, but okay. If Aaron Rodgers were to be signed by the Steelers, there's been a lot of chatter about that. Do you think the Steelers would be more, less, or the same in terms of threat level in the AFC North to the Ravens?
When Russell Wilson, comparing to when Russell
Wilson 2024 with Russ and Justin Fields.
More of a threat.
More of a threat.
I might be in the minority on this one just based on what I've seen on chat and social media and whatnot, but I think he was not fully healthy. I think he was acclimating to get back to like game speed throughout much of the first half of last year, and the Jets were going nowhere fast, which is crazy because the amount of talent that they had on that roster. But I think instantly the Pittsburgh Steelers become more of a threat. I think I would not bet against Aaron Rodgers. I think he's got more left in his tank. He didn't show a lot of those flashes again the first half of the season, but if you saw what he put on tape down the second half stretch last year with a banged up offensive line, mind you, I think he would make Pittsburgh a lot more threatening than they are currently with Russ. And you don't even know Russ's future. Now, what do I think is the best situation for them? Justin Fields. And that's my hot take. They moved on from him after a 4-2 start. They went to Russ for reasons that we've discussed on the show, which was, man, we don't have a vertical passing attack. We don't have a full-fledged passing attack with Justin Fields under center. And that was true. And I thought that was the right decision at the time. Obviously, did they lose out like five of the last 6 or 6 in a row or something crazy like that? Like we knew they would when we look at the strength of schedule, right? But I think if they actually build around Justin and try to develop Justin, like no team has really given him a chance to. I'm not saying that. I'm not telling. He did not get that chance in Chicago. If he gets that chance in Pittsburgh, he might be the best long-term option that they have of the 3.
Oh, not might. Like he would be. He's younger. And he's got room to grow. Yeah. So just to be clear, you think Aaron Rodgers is a bigger threat than Justin Fields, but you think they should move forward with Justin Fields because of the long-term
The threat for
implications.
2025,
Yeah.
the biggest threat for 2025 would be Rodgers. The best move for them, because they can't right now, they'd either be going, the alternatives to anything we're talking about right now would be trading up ridiculously to try and go get Shador or Cam and spending ridiculous draft capital to do so, or getting a bridge like Kirk. And so if I'm looking at those options and I'm weighing it, I'm like, I'm either going to extend Justin and try and build around him and lean on what we saw from him in a 6-game sample size where he led us to a 4-2 record.
Mm-hmm.
I know it was a game managing type of role that he served, but let's see if we can build off that. Or I'm going to extend Rodgers and try and win a championship with him with whatever he has left in the tank, which I do still think there's something there.
Yeah. Well, I guess from my view, they'd be either the same or less of a threat with Aaron. And I'm not dismissing that Aaron could play better than he did last year. I agree with you. I think that there were still the lingering issues with his Achilles and he was banged up and whatnot. And as much as he created a lot of chaos in New York, they've never really been like this picture of franchise stability in the past, right? So them together was just like another level of instability. So I do think that Aaron could potentially play better than he has, obviously, over the last 2 years and last year. So I hear you on that. But because he can hardly move, because he's 41 and the Steelers do not have an offensive line, I do not see him and the Steelers as like this big threat. I think he would complain about his weapons. I don't think he'd want enough. He kept wanting to get more and more with the Jets when he had who's the young guy there with the Jets? Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
And then he had to get into I just don't think it's more of a threat. I don't think it's more. I think it would be even. I don't know that it would go down because I think the Steelers find a way to always maintain above being 500. And it also seems like the fact that Aaron Rodgers is even working out right now instead of being at some, country in South America doing his camps, like the fact that he's even working out makes me feel like he's like taking this seriously and really wants to, find a team and be with the team. So I think he could be better, but I just don't see them being more of a threat with him.
Okay. Chat, what say you? A lot of people weighing in on this. Obviously, this is just smoke right now. There have been plenty of smoke screens over recent weeks, Sarah, when it comes to Pittsburgh and the quarterback position. There's been others that have been floated around as well. So they clearly have a decision to make. And it honestly starts with, where are you evaluating who quarterbacked you for the majority of last season? And that is Russell Wilson. Or are you going to run it back with him? I certainly wouldn't, based on what I saw. So that's the Pittsburgh discussion. I'm sure they're going to be having plenty of discussions, being that everybody is leaning into what's the right word?
Sorry to interrupt you, Bobby. Just think about this. It would be wild if Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers both came to the AFC North next year.
Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that? And then Cleveland, yeah, right. Is Cleveland going to go after Kirk? Would potentially Pittsburgh go with Aaron? We'll see. But everybody in the NFL is descending onto Indianapolis this week for the 2025 NFL Scouting Combine. I am 2.5 hours out from my flight leaving BWI, so looking forward to a week full of coverage. And as we've discussed a couple times now, just in case you missed it, Eric DeCosta will meet with reporters tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by John Harbaugh at 1 p.m. Eastern. Because of that back-to-back schedule and because of us wanting to give you the most fresh content possible, we will be live once Harbaugh finishes his press conference. So hopefully that ends up being about 1:30 Eastern time coming up tomorrow. So a couple things that I think we're going to be looking out for, Sarah, and certainly we'll be following along with accordingly based on what we hear, based on what is shared, based on the way that these press conferences are handled tomorrow. At the top of the list is, what is your future with the imminent future of your franchise left tackle, Ronnie Stanley, who you spent a first-round draft pick on way back when? Will he be with you for a 10th season in 2025? And Sarah, if not, where do you go from there?
That is, Bobby, this is going to be absolutely massive. Again, they will have all their scouting these combine prospects, but by the end of this week, Eric DeCosta and the Ravens should generally know what's going to happen with Ronnie Stanley. Will they know by Tuesday when they're talking to reporters? Maybe not. That'll still be early in the week, but they will talk with Ronnie Stanley's agent this week. They will be in the same city. This will be discussion if they haven't already started talking, right? But Ronnie Stanley's agent, even though you're not supposed to be tampering, he will get a pretty good idea of what the market will be for Ronnie. And so as Jeff Zrebiec wrote it this morning, also getting a little bit of a preview for the combine, he says, in many ways, Ronnie Stanley is the key to the Baltimore Ravens offseason. So if they re-sign him, then they can focus on all the other needs, right? This is by far the biggest needs. And they'll know how much money they have. They'll know if they're going to attack, what level of free agents they can attack. They can know a little bit idea. Are we going to need to be putting together ammunition to maybe trade up in the draft to get a tackle that we feel like is worthy of protecting number 8, the face of our franchise, the best quarterback of 2024, the 2-time MVP, the guy that we've given, all of the guaranteed money to? Like, this is it. And so Ronnie's going to be the key decision of how the rest of this goes. And as Jeff writes, the ramifications for it is going to be so wide-reaching. I'm very curious what they're going to say on Tuesday, even though they're probably not going to say a lot. But I would like to know if they're going to say, we want Ronnie back. Sometimes they say that, right? So when they wanted Lamar Jackson back, they made that very clear. If they want Ronnie Stanley back, they can make that very clear. If they're a little bit more on the fence, I feel like it means, hey, we would like him back, but we're not going to go all out for him. So it kind of depends a little bit on Ronnie. So how enthusiastically they talk about him may tell us a lot.
No doubt. Ronnie turns 31 next month. He was the 6th overall pick back in round 1 of the 2016 draft. He's a first-team All-Pro from 2019, 2-time Pro Bowler, including this past season, and somebody who has absolutely built himself back up and is worthy of a contract extension wherever he ends up after taking that pay cut that we've discussed.
Yeah, and here's what's crazy. That pay cut, so he took $7.5 million last year. That was his pay cut. It wasn't like $1 million, $2 million, $7.5 million. He took a pay cut. And he needed to, because if he hit free agency last year, it would not look like he would not be having the prospects he's about to have this time around. Okay. But the question is, does that 1 year, just like in 2019, where he had that sensational All-Pro year, then you paid him big time. Does this 1 year offset 36 missed games of 67 from 2020 to 2023 after you paid him? It was like a couple weeks after he got paid that he had that injury. That's not his fault. That's not like, oh, you're getting old and you're getting nagging injuries or whatever. Like, it was a legit tough injury, but he missed 36 of 67 games. And by the way, as when The Athletic did the story where they asked their beat writers to talk about the biggest needs for each team, 11 of 32 teams said offensive line.
Yep.
So you have to balance all that. You have to balance his resurgent year. You have to balance how much other people want him. You have to balance the talents in the draft, and you have to balance how much money you have. So
he will be coveted. He will absolutely be coveted. So that's, of course, at the top of the list. The question that might be asked and probably will be asked prior to the Ronnie future is Justin Tucker's imminent future. As we learned last week, the Baltimore Banner reported that investigators, NFL investigators, that is, were in Baltimore as recently as Thursday or Friday, if I'm not mistaken, to interview massage therapists who have come forward with these allegations. So obviously Eric and John and the organization itself has not given comment aside from that they're monitoring this situation not long after it first broke with the Banners reporting. And you can bet that they are combing through best practices, and they will be prepared, Sarah, at some point tomorrow when these questions are inevitably asked right off the top.
They'll be ready for it. Both EDC and John will talk with, the head of PR, Chad Steele, and they'll be ready for a question. They'll have something ready. What I'm more going to be interested in is in the second and third question of Justin Tucker that they might not anticipate. They'll know it's going to come up. They'll talk about how serious it is. They'll talk about how an investigation is going on. They'll talk about, but there will be follow-up questions, zero tolerance policy, which is which is sometimes misunderstood. Obviously, zero tolerance once you have all the facts, once the investigation is in. People want to say zero tolerance from the moment there's like an allegation, right? Or 16, which is a lot. So I will be interested in how they respond once the second, third questions come in. Remember, they only have 15 minutes with them, and there's a wide range of questions they want to get in. So, we'll be listening for that for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And then, of course, adding to this list at the Combine will be if you're moving on from Justin Tucker, which we're not expected to learn about that tomorrow, I wouldn't think, because of where the investigation is. But if internally they do plan on moving on, then they're going to want to be looking at kickers. They're going to want to be looking at special teams, of course, throughout this week and throughout this offseason as the season itself nears. Aside from that, I think they're going to want to be locked in, and I'm going to try and get in front of as many of these drills as possible when it comes to the defensive line, the interior defensive line prospects as they rebuild and retool their trenches. And it really goes both ways on both sides of the ball, as we've discussed in the aftermath of the Super Bowl. Guard is a position that you would think they're going to want to at least bring some competition in for the Voorhees and the Fa'aleles of the world, if you will. So those are about four or five topics going into the Combine. Not just those five, but those are five of the most pressing that I know we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about. And I'll try to track down as much as I can, being on the grounds there in Indy.
I've mentioned this before with the Lamar Jackson contract, and when we're talking about the salary cap, the national media it's not even on their radar, but it has been on the local media's radar. So they will bring it to attention at the Combine, I think. I think it was Jeff who asked it at the season kind of review presser with Eric and John. So it wouldn't surprise me if Jeff brings it up again, because at the time, Eric DeCosta said, I will have a conversation with Lamar at some point in the season. And Jeff wrote about that in The Athletic. I think it was last week. And so I could imagine Jeff or somebody else saying, hey, at the last press conference, you said that you wanted to give Lamar some time after that division round loss, that you wanted to give him time. But have you since followed up? Are you guys talking about a contract extension?
No doubt. And of course, there's a bunch of other trickle down topics as well, right? Wide receiver depth. You're going to continue to prioritize the fullback position and allow Pat Ricard to retire in Baltimore. I mean, it goes on and on and on.
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah, exactly. So
will Voorhees step up? Will all that kind of stuff for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yep, for sure. And again, it's only 15-minute windows, guys. Remember that 15-minute windows for availability tomorrow at the podium for DeCosta and Harbaugh, and we'll of course be ready to dissect every second of each one of those. Couple quick hits before we jump out, and a couple super chats as well. You brought this in from Ian.
Yeah, so Ian Harditz, he brought in a graphic to on the horizontal line. It talks about the average time until a sack was allowed in seconds, and then on the vertical you have rush yards before contact per carry. There is one team that is separated from all the others. Insane. And it is the Baltimore Ravens. And you want to give some credit to the offensive line. We're not going to take it all away. But as Ian points out, this is 1,000% the Lamar Jackson effect. And Mina Kimes, when she talks about her MVP voting, she felt like a lot of people were downplaying how good the offensive line play in Buffalo is. And then so Buffalo fans would be like, well, look at these stats for the Ravens. And she's like, you cannot attribute all that to the offensive line. This is for sure the Lamar Jackson effect. And then she took a deeper dive into the numbers. And this 1,000% And this is one reason why Derrick Henry had a career year in terms of yards per carry. And it's the Lamar Jackson effect. Is Lamar going to get this ball, or is Derrick going to get this ball when they took advantage of those options? And so took almost 4 seconds before a sack was allowed. That is a Lamar Jackson stat. And then it was a 2.2 yards per carry before contact. Yes, that is also a Lamar Jackson stat. Again, not taking all away from the offensive line, but let's not underestimate what Lamar does for this team.
Here's a Chuck Pagano stat for you on the way out here. And this is definitely somebody that I'm going to want to try and track down this week, especially because this is his town. He's a former Colts head coach, and he's now a senior secondary assistant for John Harbaugh's defense. And Sarah, he is moving in to his new place in Baltimore. I believe he actually just shared on the lounge that he's at a hotel for the time being, but I'm sure they'll get him hooked up with a townhouse or something in Owings Mills. And look what he went and grabbed. A must for the new apartment, LFG XL wipes, dude wipes. What else does he have in here? A bunch of cleaning supplies, it looks like. So without Mrs. Pagano around, it looks like he's being a professional here. Well done, coach.
Yeah. He's now remind me was it Justin Forsett that was investing in a dude wipes? Was it exactly dude wipes? I remember he had
absolutely no idea.
Oh, I don't even know if you were around for that. Were you around when Justin Forsett was here?
No.
Oh. It's so funny how the most random things I will remember.
Yeah.
After covering the team for so many years.
We'll have to get Justin on and ask, what the heck? He's always a willing interview participant. Why not? But
he sure is. But this is one of those when you retweeted it and I retweeted it. It was it's one of those magazine articles where it's where they have celebrities up and say, hey, they're just like us. He's got a toilet brush in there.
Look at him.
What else is in there?
He's
got a light bulb. He's got light bulb. He looks like he's got some bleach in there.
He's got soap.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Look at this. Hand soap. Well done, coach. Definitely want to try and track him down. And by the way, he was a big time candidate for me for that whole scenario that I played through for everybody on Friday. But I ended up falling short of the deadline. So tonight I'll be courtside behind the Nuggets bench with my friend from NBC, but he ended up filling the spot. So I tried a lot. I went deep into the Rolodex, but one, with it being so early in the week, and two, with it being in Indianapolis, which is not exactly a market that I have a ton of familiarity with. So that was too hard to overcome. I might have the same chance tickets wise on Wednesday night. So stay tuned.
Okay.
But I look forward to the week, and I look forward to catching up with as many folks as we possibly can for the show. Kevin Roberts showed us some love via Super Chat. We appreciate you, Kevin, for hopping on today. And Massey says, every season, some teams that suck are unexpectedly good and vice versa. Which AFC teams didn't make the playoffs do you see as a threat next season, and which playoff team this season may fall off?
Bengals come to mind, right? They should.
Cincy would be the non-playoff team that's going to be back. And then I'd have to look at the playoff field.
One that falls off.
Let's see.
Steelers. Especially if they get Aaron Rodgers, right?
Yeah, but
right,
Sarah,
Bobby?
they're always going to find a way, Sarah. They're always going to find a way. You know that.
It's happening within the AFC North itself. Who else was in? Steelers was in. Bills were in. Chiefs.
Houston was in. Buffalo, Kansas City.
Yeah, I would swap Steelers and Bengals. Have the question within the AFC North might be the one. Denver,
you're going Pittsburgh.
You're going points out.
Denver's 7, but I think they're an ascending team with the amount of cap space they have available.
Can their quarterback repeat what he did? Was it a 1-year wonder, or is he going to go? Is he going to continue the trend up?
I think as long as Sean Payton's with him, I like his chances of continuing to develop. I'm going to go Houston. I think CJ is starting to get early on. For one of the reasons, one of the beliefs out there was because of how quickly they peaked. It may have been due to him being on his rookie contract, which he still is. Mm-hmm. As that continues to progress, I think it'll be more and more challenging. And I thought that they were a little bit of a pretender this year. And maybe just maybe that's because we had a chance to watch that Christmas Day debacle. But I'll go Houston of the playoff teams that I could see descending, and then ascending. I'll go with you. The easy one is Cincinnati.
Cincinnati. Who takes? Okay, so in the case of Denver or Cincy and the Steelers, those were wild card spots. In the case of Houston, they won the division. So if they're not in, are you predicting the Colts win the division? Like, who do you think would win that division? That's my problem with taking Houston out.
I mean, do I believe enough in Anthony Richardson for that?
I don't know.
Tennessee's rebuilding right now. I don't know what their quarterback situation is going to be.
I'm not picking Tennessee over Houston. Jags?
No.
Oh, are you putting Houston back in, or are you taking Indy?
No, I'll go with Indy, and I'll try to have a patient developmental mind for AR-15.
Okay.
How about that?
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Massey.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. And thanks to all 2,400 plus of you joining us concurrently right now, Tila. We appreciate you. We love you for being here on this Monday. The rest of the week, I will be in Lucas Oil Stadium for all of our shows if things go well. So looking forward to everything that could potentially come along the way for my first combine experience. Again, mark your calendars accordingly. We'll be live after John Harbaugh's press conference tomorrow. So don't be spamming us in the chat tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern when that rolls around and we're nowhere to be found because we're prepping for the show. Look forward to it. I'm heading off to BWI right now. Appreciate you, partner, as always. We'll catch up with you in under a little over 24 hours from right now, about 24 hours and 50 minutes if we're being exact. That's a 2 o'clock start. Hopefully we're on before then. But anyway, I look forward to it. For Sarah Ellison, I'm Bobby Trossett signing off from this Monday Ravens Lunch Hour live stream. On your way out, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell if you haven't already done so you can be notified of when we're dropping our daily live content. And as always, we'll catch up with you guys soon here inside the vault.
Safe travel.